an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Gravity Falls, Season 2, Episode 12, A Tale of Two Stans. In this episode, we find out just what happened between Stan and Stan, and it's a really touching, sad story. I just want them to be friends again, you guys. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Melanie for commissioning this episode. Y'all, I watched this again last night with Owen, and I was so delighted because he really loved it. This is one of those episodes that, like, when you think of this show, I bet this is one of the episodes you think of first. This is a definitive character-driven. It's not just about the reveal of all of these things that this show has been building up to, although that's gratifying and, you know, definitely shit I wanted to know. But it's more than that. It's also about, like, caring about these characters and getting so much more background on them as people and how much they mean to each other. That's really the main thing, is that getting it across to an audience that two characters really, really genuinely like and care about each other is a tricky thing to do without it feeling really hokey and corny and maybe not quite believable. And the way they set up these two little brothers in the beginning of this episode, when we first meet them, you just get, like, it just, yeah, this is their relationship. It feels real right away. And I loved getting to see the two of them, like, older and trying to, like, you know, relate to each other in front of the mirror at the end of the episode, and the way that it gets brought back, where then we start talking about Dipper and Mabel, and, like, Mabel saying, I really hope this doesn't happen to us eventually. And it's like a chilling moment a little bit when she asks that, because when you're a kid, everything feels, if you are lucky enough to have a stable situation, like it's going to be this way forever. And the mere idea that things will change, that you don't have control over what happens in your life, and that the adults that you trust don't have any more control than than you, really. I just feel it's a very, like, sort of bittersweet thing to watch her come to this realization that Stan and Stan likely did not see this coming either. This isn't something like, and that's a real sobering thought as a kid, that grown-ups will encounter shit that will split them apart, that this wasn't a choice exactly. It was a series of bad decisions that accidentally ended up causing this rift. And as she puts it, they really liked each other before they started acting all stupid. I mean, it's an oversimplification, but she's not entirely wrong. Both of them get so caught up in petty, like, anger that it winds up driving this wedge between them that they should be on the same team. Austin says Stan and Ford is how they differentiate them. That is what I should say, huh? All right, I'll try and remember to do that. So anyway, all right, I want to back up, but I really like this episode. I found it really moving, and I can't tell you, like, all of the wild half-baked theories that I had in my head that I was like, that can't be right, and that doesn't make any sense, but I don't know what else it is. And it winds up being a very straightforward, in its way, kind of story. So we start off and we see these two as kids, and we've got Stanley, who is our Stan that we know, but he changed his name to Stanford once he got to Gravity Falls and decided that he was going to stay. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys. In the scene where we see all of the IDs, I did not pick up on Stanley versus Stanford. It didn't even enter my head while I was reading. Like, I think the kids even draw a little attention to it, and they read something about Stanley, and they're like, what? Or I feel like there was something that I should have noticed, but I didn't at all. So yeah, this opening where we see the two of them, we know that each of them is, we know who they are right away. Even though the Stan that we know and love wears glasses now, we have enough background on him as a person to know that the scrappy, ne'er-do-well looking one is almost definitely him. And they find this like abandoned sort of cave on the beach, and they find inside this sailboat, which they decide they are going to like basically restore over the course of their lives, and then go off and treasure hunt together and meet all the girls and have all the adventures, and it's going to be this great thing. And when we leave that scene, we go back to the two of them, and Stan is greeting Ford and being like, I can't believe it. It finally worked. I'm so excited. And Ford punches him in the face. Now, look, I know I said that they're letting petty squabbles get in the way. And it's really easy to call something petty when it's not you. And I had the instinctive reaction that I think is the same as the one that Ford has. Because what we wind up seeing later is that Ford is the smart one. He's really gifted. And it's not like he ever lords that over his brother. It's that eventually, once they're older, the differences between the two of them go from being this like charming juxtaposition to then having material effects on their lives and the direction that they are about to go. So when you're kids and one of you is smart and one of you isn't, it's just kind of like, well, you know, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. But when you go out into the world and you begin to realize that your skill set isn't exactly in demand, and you might not even know what your skill set actually is, it's a little bit less easy to just tell yourself, well, everybody's got their, like, you know. So Ford winds up getting called into the principal's office to have a meeting with his parents about his future and going to this really prestigious college. And this is one of those things that doesn't really make a lot of sense when you know how things work, but it's for the sake of the show. Cause like he misses out on going to the school he wanted to go to, but it's treated as if because he didn't get into that one, there's only one other school he could go to. This guy had like probably straight A's and like a 4.1 GPA. And he most definitely could have gotten a scholarship to any number of also very good schools. But the show has to have it happen the way it has to happen. So there's a science fair, the New Jersey Science Fair. What, you think you're some kind of smart guy? Which is one of my favorite jokes the show's ever done. It's kind of an obvious joke, but I don't care. It's perfect. And he has this project that's like a perpetual motion machine that is going to be really impressive to the scouts that are coming. And Stan is really bummed to hear that his brother is seriously considering going to college. He assumes that his brother is going to want to go on the same adventure they've always said they would go on together. He thinks they are a package deal. The idea that he would want to go off and do something by himself without his brother hasn't even occurred to Stan. And that's the part that I find really heartbreaking, is like, maybe Ford, before somebody said to him, you know, you can do XYZ, it probably hadn't occurred to him either that he would want to leave his brother behind. And I think that is also something important that Mabel is like kind of picking up on, is there are going to be, it's not about the other person not meaning as much to you anymore. It's about you being excited to embark on an adventure of your life, of getting to do things that the other person may not have any interest in to begin with, or may not be able to do. And do you give that up just to be around the other person? Because these two don't know it yet. I mean, when I say these two, I'm talking about Mabel and Dipper, but also kind of Stan and Ford, because Stan, okay, I'm backing it up a little bit. Stan fucks up Ford's little project, the perpetual motion machine, by accident. When I saw the scene, I really thought he was going to do it on purpose. And I just felt like sick. I was like, that is just such a shit thing to do. I was really pleased that it's an accident. And it's a bummer because later on, his brother doesn't want to listen to him explain that it was an accident. To the other point, though, whether it was an accident or not, Stan could have warned his brother so that he didn't just embarrass himself in front of the crew that was coming out. He told himself, like, oh yeah, it's probably fine, but he should have said something. So he's not blameless. It wasn't a completely innocent mistake that, wound up. He made an innocent mistake initially, but then he made the choice to not come clean to his brother beforehand and help prepare him. But in the end, Ford's choice gets sort of taken away from him. The school, it's not that he gives it up to stay with his brother. The school rejects him. And I really, if we're thinking in terms of how Mabel can't imagine doing something without Dipper, when you do choose to forego what you want for somebody that you care about, in the moment, that might seem like the kind decision, like the decision that is going to keep the two of you close. But what winds up happening is a resentment gets planted, and it might just be a small thing, but often if you are asked to give something up for the sake of somebody else, that's not the only thing you're asked to give up. It begins a pattern of giving things up. And that little seed sprouts and spreads and grows and becomes this infestation that sours the whole relationship and makes it so that something that was lovely, that was mutual and beautiful, then gets just kind of torn apart, So that's my advice to everybody out there, my half-baked advice. I have given things up for people. One of my biggest regrets, I have a few of amazing opportunities that I chose to not pursue. And one of the biggest ones was this job opportunity I had in California that I gave up because my father and mom had just divorced. My father was living in the house alone, and I felt like I should be there for him. And then when I came home, there was nowhere for me to even live. He had moved into this one bedroom, and I wound up having to move in with my aunt and uncle. And I should have stayed in California. I came home thinking he needed me, and he really didn't. But when you are going to give something up, be prepared for, even if it does wind up being the right decision, occasional flashes of rage about it. Because life isn't fair, and that's just how that winds up. And you never do know how it would have gone. And I really wish so much, and I understand when Ford sees the toffee peanuts bag, I get why he jumped to the conclusion he did, because I jumped to the same conclusion while I was watching. There's no reason to not think that this was done on purpose after they just had the conversation they did, where Stan is sharing his concern that, his brother's going to go off without him. Yeah, I get what, but I wish so much that he had stopped and listened to his brother and really heard, man, I am so sorry. And I know I really fucked up, but I didn't mean to do this. I don't know how much it really would have helped, but it is always hard for me to watch a pair of people who are close not allow one another to have their say and really communicate well. Because I always think the more you know about the other person's perspective, the more compassion you're going to have for their position. So all of that to say, and I forgot to mention that their parents are just so funny. And I know we've seen Stan's dad in a flashback before, but I just love the whole way that he's illustrated. I love how he's got this little chin over a sheer wall of neck, and the neck is a little too wide for the collar of his shirt, so it goes in like it's contained inside the collar. And all so much about the flashbacks between the two of them are really sweet. There's a point when they're fixing this boat up. These bullies come over and make fun of Ford for having 6 fingers. Stan is really so supportive and tells him, we only need each other, even if they're right and we don't make any other friends, who even cares? And then ends it all with high 6 instead of high 5, which I just thought was so cute. I really did. I just loved that a lot. So when we come back into the present, the fact that Ford is still so angry, I mean, he is angry at the fact that Stan basically didn't listen to him when he gave Stan instructions on what to do and shoved him in such a way that he wound up going through the portal. But the thing about that scene is it's so clear that Ford doesn't understand what it is that Stan has been going through. Ford has been out here, despite the fact that he didn't get to go to the school that he wanted, he's still making huge discoveries. He's still pursuing adventure. He is, in his way, doing the thing that the two of them had planned to do together. He is kind of treasure hunting, except the treasures are these weird crypto, creatures and just strange happenings. And it is all based in science, but it's still very... I mean, it's the kind of thing that if he found out as a little boy that he was out here doing experiments with weird creatures that he discovered in the woods, I bet he would have been thrilled. So he's over here doing this while Stan has been kicked out of the house and just has to sort of figure out a way to live. And we see his descent as he keeps on trying scam after scam. Because his father, his parents aren't proud of their son for the pure reasons that parents should be. They aren't oh, we are so happy for you that you're going to have this, life full of discovery ahead. They are hoping to get rich because their son's a genius. And his father, ironically, says something to Stan about how you always try and ride your brother's coattails. And I'm just yeah, you're all trying to do. That's all you want, is to send your kid to a good school so that he can get a job and support his parents, which, pretty shitty. So his father says, until you make millions, basically, and can come back and like make up for what we lost, then don't come back at all. And this is giving us a real insight into Stan's obsession with making money. Now, I'm going to tell you guys something that is going to feel like a non sequitur, but I can't help but draw this comparison. Another show, another podcast that I listen to, and it's like really the only other podcast that I consistently listen to, The Complete Guide to Everything. I am a patron of theirs, and they do a patrons only book club show. And last month, the book they covered was Papa, the Story of Papa John by John H. Schnatter, which is Papa John's real name. In this book, and it's hysterical because the book is apparently like something that they suspect was only meant to be like really, it wasn't meant to go out for sale to a wide audience, even though that was attempted. But Papa John, you know, he had his like disgrace happen pretty much like 2 weeks after this book was launched. So it did not sell, but they think that it was actually intended to be sent to all of the franchisee owners of the, or the franchisees of Papa John's, because it's a lot about his like battle to become Papa John. And in one of the first chapters, he talks about his father, who was a really big fuck up. His dad was kind of like, he makes me think of Belle's dad in Beauty and the Beast. He was always trying to invent things, and he never actually like accomplished anything. But he sure invested a lot of money in shit that never worked out. And he constantly borrowed money and was always in debt. And there was always a struggle in his family to get by because his father failed to provide for his family. And it was in an era where their mother providing was not even an option, you know? So Papa John, when he got older, his mother, who obviously longed to say this to her husband, but could not because she is meant to be the supportive wife, instead said to her son that if he isn't a success in life and doesn't make money, then he is dead to her. Were apparently, according to him, almost her exact words. And this clearly made a big impression, because all you can really glean from the rest of the book is that Papa John, while a complete shyster in his way, is also a heartbreaking workaholic. He is somebody who just never stops. And that kind of like motivation may sound way too pat to be able to be like, well, a parent said this and the kid became this, and you can just draw a line from point A to point B. But you know what? Sometimes it be like that. There are times where a simplified explanation is actually correct, and there's just, you know, no help for it. And I really feel that way with Stan. Like, he is a less racist, fingers crossed, who knows, and hopefully less problematic Papa John, who has just tried every, like, shady practice in the book. And it's a real sad realization as viewers to find out this is where that all stems from. We want better than this for Stan, you know? In some ways, I almost am happy to know where it comes from, because so much of the time it does just feel like a sheer lack of empathy. But also, it's so sad to know that, like, I mean, their parents are long dead by now, right? And yet he's still pushing himself to complete this assignment that his father gave him, that he, even if he accomplishes it in some way, it won't matter. It's not going to fix anything. And I think that he hopes it would fix something with at least his brother, but I don't feel like he gets the position that his brother's in. His brother, that's the part that makes me the saddest. This thing that happened here, that Ford thinks Stan did, it causes a permanent rift where it seems as if Ford never ever reached out to Stan that entire time. No, we don't know. I don't think Stan says that he calls and hangs up, if I'm not mistaken. And he's also not really in like a dedicated location. He winds up finally getting a postcard, which I don't know how it even reached him, but because he was like in a hotel room. But when he gets this postcard, he's been waiting for his brother to reach back out to him for literally decades at this point. And he shows up expecting this like heartfelt reunion with someone who had been his very best friend. And that person just wants to give him a task. The fact that Stan flies off the handle, winds up shoving Ford, I get it. You know, it's not the kind of thing where it's so when you have a character that fucks things up by accident all the time, the one I always think of with that is Hagrid, right? Hagrid, he just doesn't think things through. He's not real smart about like what the consequences could be, like even sussing that out. Hagrid is deeply frustrating in that way. But Stan, when he does things by accident, you can understand what it was that was driving him in the moment. You know, there was no, it wasn't stupidity necessarily. It was just an impulse and a reaction. It was emotion, you know? So realizing that his brother, who he hasn't seen at that point in what, like 30 years, 20 years, doesn't even care about seeing him, that he's just giving him this journal to go like bring somewhere, it's insulting. And 100% I would feel the same way. Like I would just be so disgusted. And it's really frustrating that Ford doesn't see what it is that Stan is feeling. And it makes sense because from his point of view, there is this crazy experiment that he does with old man McGucket, who was going to be Bill Gates, but then wound up coming and helping him out and fucking up his entire life. And old man McGucket says something when he comes back out, a young man McGucket, I guess we could say, when he comes back out of the portal, he's talking in kind of riddles. And he says something, I'm trying to find the spot. I really hate Disney Plus, by the way, in terms of the way that their player works. He starts first speaking just kind of like gibberish, and then he says, "When gravity falls and earth becomes sky, fear the beast with just one eye." And this is the thing that sort of motivates Stan. Like, you know, he goes on to tell Ford, that this machine can be used for basically the destruction of the world. And it's super dangerous. At first, Ford doesn't quite believe him. But then when Fiddleford leaves, he hears all this like whispering, and he begins to get really paranoid. So once Stan finally shows up, he's been sort of like stewing in this paranoia for a minute. And I want so much for him to stop and think about who this person is to him that he is asking to see. I want him to really think about this being a reunion after decades. But all he can think about is the potential danger of this thing that he has created and doing the best he can to mitigate that danger. And while in a way that is admirable and responsible, it is so fucking tone deaf. Dude, you know, like, honestly, the fact that Stan pulls out his lighter and is just like, oh, really? Well, you want me to decide what to do with it? Here's what I'm fucking doing with it. I ain't mad at him for that. Like, this isn't what he wanted. This isn't what he signed up for. And if somebody just, like, completely seemed to not care about me as a person, and we had been as close as we saw the two of them be, and they just basically abandoned me, and then they want me to, like, come and fucking do them a favor? Go screw. And I don't really feel like Ford gives a good enough reason why this shouldn't be just burned. He keeps behaving as if, like, this is, like, so dangerous that we can't let the plans fall into the wrong hands. But he also doesn't want the knowledge of all of this to be lost. And I gotta ask, dude, why not? Just let it be lost. Destroy your crazy machine and get the hell out. And I know that he even says to Fiddleford a little bit later, destroy it, but it's my life's work. Yeah, but you know what, dude? Oh, well. I said it. Oh, well. Life's full of disappointments. Yeah, it's your life's work, and your life's work turns out to be a fucking nightmare machine. Maybe your life's work is trash. Too dangerous for anybody. And you should just abandon it. And I know that sucks. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that I would necessarily make the right decision here. But also, what the hell, dude? So, yeah, Stan's reaction, as much as he's being kind of a dick, I'm really just very much like Team Stan on this one. I really am. And I'm so bummed out that by the end of the episode, him and Ford have not made up. Like, he says something to Ford about how, you're really not going to thank me, are you? And Ford gives him this look like, I can't believe you think I should even thank you. And granted, Stan did push him through the portal, but Stan didn't know what this fucking was. You just summoned him to this weird supervillain lair with this crazy fucking machine telling him a bunch of wild fairy tales and didn't explain anything and just gave him a task and then acted like you were about to just push him out the fucking door again. Oh yeah, I guess maybe he's gonna not treat things with the respect they deserve because he doesn't know what the fuck it is. Not really his fault here, buddy. So, what Stan does is stays in Gravity Falls because he kind of just doesn't have anywhere else to go. And he can't leave with his brother having just gone through this fucking portal. Like, that's not an option. He's not just going to leave him in there. He is determined to find a way to turn it back on and get his brother back out again. And his brother had already hidden the other journals, which Stan needs in order to turn it back on. So that was why he begins to search for the journals and is being so secretive about it. I wish that he had, like, told the twins what was going on so that, like, they could get an idea of the importance of all of this. But, you know, I kind of get not saying anything. So I really like that the way this works out. First of all, there are so many great jokes this episode that pay off. That was one thing that I will say I found a little disappointing watching it with Owen. I don't know if it's just because I have watched most of these episodes several times each due to covering them, or if it's because covering them gives me an extra bit of, like, connection to everybody. But there were a lot of moments in the flashbacks where we get to see characters that we've gotten to know very young and doing things that are like super duper in character. And Owen didn't have a reaction to all of them the way that I did. Some of them he did, some of the more obvious ones, but there were ones that like he didn't even notice at all. Like at one point after all this goes down and Stan is figuring out what to do, he goes to the like Quickie Mart, and we see outside of it the teenagers who are, you know, dancing that wind up driving this old couple who die in the Quickie Mart to haunt the place because they hate teenagers. Owen not only did not notice this when I pointed, I was watching on my computer and I paused it and pointed it out. He didn't notice them, but then when I was like, remember the teenagers with the old couple in the convenience store? He didn't even remember the episode I was talking about, y'all. I was horrified. So disappointed. What? How do you not remember that episode? That for me was one of my favorites just because it was so weird. Like there's so many of these episodes with the creatures that live in the woods or the creatures that are, you know, part of the ecosystem in a way of Gravity Falls. They are weird, but that one is a particularly hilarious motivation that they gave those ghosts. And I just couldn't believe that when I was like, remember that episode? He didn't even know what I was talking about. I was like, who even are you, dude? What? Are you serious? And we wind up meeting, what is the name of, it's Susan, right? Because she's One-Eyed Susan. Is that right? Lazy Susan. Is it Lazy Susan? Fuck. But we see her, like, and we get to find out what actually happened to her eye. Yep, Lazy Susan, says Austin. And there's just a bunch of really, like, at the end of a series, and this isn't like the end, because as I say, the last episode when I checked, I was like really startled to see that we're about halfway through. We still have quite a bit left to go, but I just really love having this like long-term setup of all of this stuff that then we get to like have pay off and watch moments that didn't need to be explained. It wasn't like an ongoing mystery, but then we get to see what happened there. We get to see why, you know, her eye is messed up. I just love that happened. But yeah, so Stan decides to stay and continue working on this thing. And he finally gets it going, really excited to see his brother. And then his brother just punches him in the face. Meanwhile, the entire U.S. government has figured out where they are and has even gotten so far as to find the secret entrance behind the vending machine. And I want to say too, on a personal note, Ford can get it. His whole all in black, bandage on one arm, adventuring intellectual Indiana Jones, but like slightly nerdier thing that he's got going on. I'm here for it. I like it. It's good luck. Anyway, so what they have to do, Dipper, who is adorable this episode because he's meeting the author and he is just flipping shit over it, has one of those like forget guns that they use to like wipe people's memories. And he pulls that out and Ford is able to like redirect the signal through the speaker outside so that it basically wipes the memory of everybody on the entire team. And I felt a little bit bad because, like, I don't want them to get caught, but I also have rather grown to like Agent Powers and Agent Trigger, and I kind of wanted them to, like, succeed. At least they didn't get hurt. You know, it wound up working out. I do wonder, though, you know, the way that this goes is that all of the data that they have about this case is on this one little thumb drive. And I really love the joke about asking them for all of their floppy disks and 8 tracks, right? But, yeah, that is destroyed by, being fed to a goat. But, there would definitely be more data somewhere. There would be backups, there would be emails, there would be all kinds of stuff that I always wonder. This is something that comes up for me in Travelers as well, the other show I'm covering, where they try and make it like things have never happened, and I'm not convinced that's possible. But nevertheless, for the sake of this, they are out of it, I guess. And it, like, the way that this ends, and I was really surprised by it. I didn't think this was how we were gonna play this. But we have Stan and Ford having a bit of a moment in front of the mirror, joking around together. And, I think Ford says something to Stan about how you look like Dad. And they both kind of have like a Josh and ya sort of like the when they were kids moment. But then he says, "Okay, Stanley, here's the deal. You can stay here for the summer to watch the kids. I'll stay down in the basement and try to contain any remaining damage. When the summer's over, you give me my house back and the Mystery Shack junk is over forever. You got it?" Now, look. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. And I don't think this is how it's going to go down, obviously. But the idea that after all this, he's just going to be like, yeah, you can stay to be a babysitter, and then you go, is super gross. And I am side-eyeing the hell out of you. All right, Ford? Like, what the hell, man? That is just heartless. Also, he does not get into any detail at all about what was in the portal. How has nobody asked that question? I guess they're like interrupted in the middle of it by the government agent showing up, so they have to like go take care of that. But like, and Dipper, he's like, I have so many questions to ask, and he's like, keeps on like pressing his pen cap. His questions are all about the journals, though. Dude, he just went through a fucking portal to like another universe or another dimension. How is nobody interested in that? Ask him what that was. I am dying to know. Oh my God. And I'm hoping that that winds up coming up again. But, depending on whatever he went through when he was through the portal, maybe that would help explain why he is being so goddamn hard-headed. But, dude, you need to fucking, like, let shit be the past. You didn't inform your brother what he was walking into. When he got there, you didn't greet him. You didn't treat him like a brother. You didn't do anything to sort of like explain the situation. He reacted emotionally, as is understandable, as most people would, and something happened to you, but it was not intentional, and he regretted it and tried to fix it immediately and literally spent like the last 15 years of his life solely working toward fixing that mistake, and you still can't let it go. You need to fucking go to have a talk with a therapist or something, sir. That's all I got to say about that. So, yeah. I really, really like this episode. I am super unsure what happens next, because I thought that the remaining season was going to be them coping with having to cover this up from the government agents. But the government agents seem to be out of the picture now. Now, that might not be true. They might be back. But as of right now, I don't know what the rest of the season is about. And I have to imagine that it's something interdimensional that, like, I don't know. But we have the thing that Old Man McGucket said. And we have Bill, the fucking triangle eyeball guy, who's floating around and makes me extremely nervous. So I figure it has to do with him somehow, but I don't have any theories on what that looks like at all. So don't ask me about that. And that's about it. So yeah, Melanie had said that she was okay with my episodes being a little bit shorter because the show itself is so short, but she wanted to give me time, and I'm glad, because like this did need more than half an hour to talk about. I'm glad that she booked this as a separate one. But I think I'm good. Is there anything that you guys want to ask before I wrap up? I think Melanie is gone now. Austin is still here. Who else is here? Who we got? Kyle's here. Hi, Kyle. But if y'all don't have anything that you particularly want to ask me, then I will definitely just wrap this one up. Austin says, any theories about unanswered questions? I don't have enough information to formulate a theory. You know, like the main question I have is just about the dimension and what it is about Gravity Falls that makes it susceptible to everything that's happening. It's like there's a weakness in that spot somehow. But, you know, like that's it. That's all. I don't really have anything to go on for a theory. So yeah, I got nothing on that. My apologies. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again so much to all of y'all for being in the chat. Thank you so much to Melanie for commissioning this. I really have been having so much fun watching this. Thank you, Melanie, a lot. And you know what? Let me check real quick and see when the next episode is, because this should. I just can't believe that we are not further along into the season. I just, you know, with everything that's been happening in this, I really thought, okay, how much longer can we possibly go? But I was so wrong. All right, so this was episode 12. Episode 13 will be May 9th. It's going to be a minute. And then after that, the next one won't be until June 3rd and June 10th. So they're going to be spaced out quite a bit. But you know, we'll be getting to the end of things by then, because we're going to be doubling up again, it looks like. Or no, we're not. The May 9th will be episode 13. June 3rd will be 14. And then for the 10th, it'll be 15 and 16. But then we'll be only doing episode 17 for the 12th. So that's what we got so far. Let's see. Austin says, like Mel said, you might want Owen to watch next ep with you. He will enjoy it. Okay, noted. I will try and get him to do that. He was very wanting to like go do something else last night, and I had to be like, I'm about to record on this, so I have to rewatch it anyway, and I really need you to see it. So hopefully I can get him to watch it tonight. All right, guys, thank you again so much, and I will be seeing you in like a month, tragedy, with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.